Asexualise, my asexual life. This is supposed to be for education about asexuality, all things asexual, and I share my own asexual life journey in order to help you in yours. If you haven't already subscribed, hit that great big subscribe button right here, right now. Please hit that bell icon so you get notified of every time I go live like now or post a new video. So in a moment, we're going to be getting into what it's like to discover you're asexual after thinking you're heterosexual for quite some time. So discovering you're not heterosexual but are asexual is very, very important. I hope I've written the title out right. So if you don't know who I am Sandra Bellamy, author of Awesome, a sexual perspective book out on Amazon, Barnes & Noble and Waterstones. Thank you very much. So yes, what is it like to discover you're not heterosexual but you are in fact asexual? I hope I put the title of this video right. And said that because I was fiddling around with the title. So when you're discovering you are not actually heterosexual, you are in fact asexual, it's kind of strange. So I thought I was heterosexual for years. It's right, laugh out loud. Oh, thank you, JS Cole. Thank you, brilliant. Thanks for confirming that. So I thought I was heterosexual for years. I had my first heterosexual boyfriend when I was just 6 years old, and that was a very weird experience for me. I have mentioned it on this channel before. It was very difficult for me because at 6 years old, 6 years old, I was passionately kissing this boyfriend I had. We were the same age, but he wanted to do some sexual touching and I didn't, and I felt really invaded. But back at that time, when I was a child, I lacked self-love, and kind of I felt pressurized into doing that and to having a boyfriend and keeping him at 6. And so I, let him do stuff that I really didn't want him to do. And yeah, it was kind of like horrible for me. And I felt so guilty and bad, even though I hadn't done anything wrong, in the sense that I wasn't asking to see anything of his. And I just felt so invaded and horrible, And so looking back, although I led a very heterosexual life quite a bit throughout the years because of all the heterosexual boyfriends I had, looking back at the incident when I was 6 years old, it was evident that I was asexual back then, but didn't realise it because I was really not interested in sexual touching, only the kissing for me, right? And love, the whole point I let him do something which I didn't want really to happen was because, well, that time I lacked self-love in my own life, right? And I was only 6 at the time. But yeah, I don't lack self-love anymore, so it's different now. But you know what I mean? It was a difficult time for me. And it wasn't particularly good at all. So in that respect. So yeah, so anyway, that ended after some time. And that was my first sexual encounter, if you like. At 6, I think that's quite weird. Well, I spoke to a counsellor about this when I used to see a counsellor at college between the ages of 17 and 19. And when I told about this experience, I was still quite traumatized by. So you can tell for me, it was really not normal. I felt really traumatized by this experience years later. I didn't even want to tell anyone about it. And I did tell someone about it eventually, but I didn't want to tell anyone about it for a long time because I felt so guilty and I felt really invaded, and it was a horrible incident for me. So anyway, when I told the counsellor this, what happened at 6, she just thought it was normal, that it was doctors and nurses, and I was really crying and in tears. I mean, I just felt totally invaded. It felt totally horrible to me. But apparently that's normal for heterosexuals. And therefore, I didn't even know I wasn't heterosexual back then. But obviously, it's apparent that I was asexual, and I didn't realise it. So this is my first experience of sexual activity that I didn't like and that made me feel really horrible, and I really wasn't that type of person. And so then I went to at school. I didn't have any boyfriends after that until I was at secondary school. At secondary school, I heard, this is what it's like as a person who thought they were heterosexual but was really asexual, right? And so when there used to be people talking in class about getting off with each other on different bases, I didn't really know what that was, other than doing, like, I thought it was doing kissing and sexual touching and stuff like that, pretty much. That's kind of like the gist I got of it. But the boys used to make comments like finger of fudge, and used to make comments about all sorts of things. And, you know, I got it in theory, but I wasn't really interested in that type of thing. For me, it was all about romance, if ever I was interested in guys. So I started having boyfriends at school, I think when I was about 14, 15. At 15 years old, I lost a lot of weight. I was really much, much thinner, the thinnest I was ever in my life back then. And so I used to get a lot of guys much more attracted to me because, I mean, nowadays, I'm not a skinny girl, but I still get loads of guys attracted to me. But back then in school, it wasn't until I really lost a lot of weight that guys were interested in me. I've always been interested in guys, never women. And so when I was at school, secondary school, I think it was about 14 when I started kind of having boyfriends. And, none of them were really that pleasant in experience. One guy, he was okay. And he came back into my life years later, but I found out in the end he wasn't a good guy. So, I haven't really had any really in my life. I haven't really had a successful relationship, as in terms of being treated the way I wished I'd been treated. Nowadays, I'm a lot more different. I don't get into a relationship with someone, or I don't stay in a relationship with someone who's not treating me well or right, So that's why I've been single for the majority of the time since 2011. So I've had 2 long-term relationships in my life, and I've had other shorter-term relationships. The first guy I thought I ever loved, I was 16 years old. Before that, I had a boyfriend when I was 15 and he was 18. And unfortunately, if you've read my Asexual Perspectives book, if you've read this book here, you will know that when I was 15, he was 18, and that was underage for sex. And he tried to do that with me, and I had to physically stop him. As an asexual person, but I didn't realize it then, I was completely oblivious to what he was up to. I never thought he'd want sex with me. It didn't compute in my brain. At school, like I said, I was thinking about romance and kissing. I was not thinking about sex or sexual touching, and I thought I was just a normal heterosexual person, as in the sense that, like, that's what I thought I was, because that's what the world tells you are, really. And because I was attracted to guys, I knew I wasn't gay. As a child, I grew up with 2 gay guys who lived around the corner from me and my parents. So my parents were always very supportive of gays, which is great. I got on well with these guys. I had a dog, and I was always brought up to know it's okay to be gay if you are, right? But I was never a lesbian. I was never attracted to the same gender. I've always been attracted to guys, only guys. But kissing, and predominantly kissing and holding their hand, and romance, really romantic, that's where I was coming from. And so when I went to, like I said, when I went to when I was 15, that the horrible incident happened where this guy tried to have sex with me. It was my boyfriend at the time, but I didn't have a clue he was going to do that, right? So I went to the city. He lived in the city, and it was he lived in my city, Exeter, actually, but I wasn't living in Exeter then. And I was a country girl, and I'd never been to a city much at all before. I'd only been to the city 2 or 3 times, I think, before then, to go to like birthday parties like KFC and stuff like that. So the city felt at that time really big to me. It was something that's really unusual and different, because I lived out in the countryside for years. And so that was kind of weird. And anyway, this guy, he was the one who got me into like dance music though. So I'm kind of grateful for that. And techno and stuff like that. So yeah, I was at his place, and on his single bed, and then he tried to basically force, do stuff to turn around. It tried to basically, well, if you read my Asexual Perspectives, but you'll know that he tried to do stuff to me and tried to have sex with me, basically, and I had to physically stop him taking my underwear down, to be perfectly honest with you. And he held my hand down and stuff on his. So it was a horrible, horrible experience. I didn't realise till years later that it was attempted rape. I never said no. I was in shock. I didn't expect it to happen. it had kind of happened quickly and I had to just stop it. So that was a really horrible incident in my life, but I just put it down to a horrible incident. I don't tend to dwell on it. It doesn't really affect me because I've got the mindset of it was a bad incident in my life and that was it, basically. And, you know, it's done and dusted, really. There's, you know, thank God I stopped him, because the next girl, he got pregnant after me, because he was friends, well, him and his, well, particularly his parents were friends with my best friend at the time years ago, who lived around, and my best friend lived around 2 doors up from me, you know. That's how I met him, at my friend's barbecue. And so, you know, I found out that he got with a girl soon after me and he got her pregnant. So I thought, thank God that wasn't me, you know. I had a lucky escape. I really did. You know, I've only ever seen him once after that incident years later, and he tried to talk to me and I didn't speak to him. I thought he disgusted me, you know. And anyway, so that was a really horrible, that was when I was 15 and he was 18, so I would have been underage if he had had sex with me. And what led up to that is, like, he was just talking to me and he did show me a condom in his drawer, but I didn't think he was going to have sex with me. I didn't even compute in my brain, this is how I know I was asexual always, but never realized it. So the fact I was labeling myself as a heterosexual because I didn't know any different, but I was really sweet and innocent in that sexual way because I just wasn't thinking like that. And when he showed me his condom, I'm just like, oh, that's nice, thinking it's a nice thing that he's got, like an object. I never related it to sex, or I never related it to thinking about him even having sex, let alone trying to have it with me. I kind of just thought, oh, that's a nice object for him to have. You know, like you would see an ornament or something. That's how my asexual brain works. But I didn't know I was asexual back then. But it all makes so much sense to me, looking back, as to why I've always been asexual, didn't realise it. I'm really proud that I've always been asexual and didn't realise it. Well, I wished I'd realised it in some way sooner, but I'm proud that I'm asexual. I'm proud that I genuinely know categorically I'm asexual, that I haven't experienced sexual attraction, and that also that I definitely had all the signs that I was asexual from a very, very young age. Even when I was 2, well, probably less than 2, I was on my, well, yeah, I was under 1.5. I was less than 1.5, I think, because my parents moved me when I was 1.5 or 2. No, my parents moved me to Devon when I was 1.5, and then I moved later on to, yeah, where I lived then. Yeah, so, but anyway, I was on my potty, so I must have been under 2, I'm guessing, if I'm on my potty, and I was in the kitchen, and I remember, like, coming to be consciously aware of the fact my mum was seeing me naked on my potty, and I'm like, oh my God, my mum can't be seeing me naked on the potty, it's wrong. And so that's when I first had my kind of awakening of my own body. And it was really weird that I can remember that. And I just thought it was so wrong for my mum to see me naked. And so since that moment, I've not liked nakedness. You know, I've always been kind of like, I don't want people to see me naked. But when I was in heterosexual relationships for a lot of years, I was naked in those relationships, right? Well, when we're having the ones that were sexual, right? The ones where I was having sex. So anyway, when I was 15, that happened, and the bad incident happened where he tried to have sex, and the condom he showed me, I just didn't associate with me or anything, and he didn't even attempt to use this condom. He just, like I said, tried to have sex with me when I didn't want it, and it was horrible. Anyway, I'll move on from that because it is a bit disturbing in some ways, but I'm okay because I just put it down to bad incident in my life, not that it's not important or significant, but it never stopped me having sex later on because I'd always classed it as a bad incident. I didn't even think about it being an attempted rape at the time. I didn't learn that till years later, and so it never put me off having sex with someone else, right? It didn't do that. Like, some people are like, oh, you're asexual, or they think people are asexual because I've had bad sexual experiences. Yes, I've had bad sexual experiences, but I've also had good sexual experiences. So I'm not like asexual for that reason. I genuinely lack sexual attraction. My brain doesn't think about having sex. Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't think that way, right? So anyway, then when I was 16 years old, that's when I had my first boyfriend that I thought I loved, but I wasn't. Even then, I remember questioning myself, wasn't 100% sure. But he pressurized into me to have sex. He was 19, I think, at the time, and I was 16. And 16 is the youngest age you can have sex at in the UK legally. And so, yeah, so he pressurized me into it. It's like, oh, but all my friends are doing it. If you love me, you'll do it. And so I gave into that peer pressure because I didn't want to lose him at the time, because I thought, you know, if I don't do it, I'm not going to be with him anymore. He's the first guy I loved, or thought I loved. So that was really difficult. Apparently when you have sex for the first time, it can hurt, but it didn't really hurt that much with me because he was really gentle. So I am really grateful for that. But 6 months after we started doing that and we'd been together a while, he dumped me. And not only did he dump me, one of the worst things he could possibly told me is that he'd been looking at other women. There was a woman at the bus stop that he fancied and that he was interested in, and basically he was looking at while he was with me. And that's the worst thing he could have done, because after that, I completely lost my trust in guys. I became a lot more jealous and possessive, if I'm honest, later on because of that incident. Hi, Shadow. Lots of love. And so, yeah, it's lovely to see you. So I became a lot more jealous and possessive. Being possessive is not a good thing. Being jealous, some people can be a little bit jealous, but jealousy and possessiveness is not a good thing. But I never was like that before. After the incident when I was 15, and I looked back and thought, oh, the guy said he went clubbing, so he's probably off having sexual stuff with other women at clubbing. And then I was 16 and he's like basically dumped me because he'd been looking at other women, and in effect, like he'd been cheating us, in the sense he'd been looking at other women behind my back and stuff. From then on, I never trusted guys ever again in relationships. I would always think, right, well, you're just looking, you're just after the women behind my back all the time. And so even to this day, it's very, very hard for me to trust a guy in a relationship, because I've had a lot of other bad experiences. I've had guys cheat on me. A lot of the reason guys cheat on me is because I don't want sex. And I didn't, even when I had sex, I didn't have it that frequently. So yeah, it's just, but I've had, like guys cheat on me even before I was 16. And so there was a guy who I was with when I think he was 14 going on 15, and we all went away like to a church youth club, and he was doing stuff in a bed with another girl, and I was supposed to be in a relationship with him. So, and he had magazines under his bed that were like porkies, it was, and I think it was meant to be porn stuff, and I was just disgusted. I hated it. And so even now, I personally don't like porn. I don't want to be with a guy who goes around looking at porn magazines and stuff. I find that really disgusting. I know that some asexuals do watch porn. They look at porn magazines, right? I'm just telling you my personal opinion. If you do that, that's up to you and whoever you're in the relationship with, whether they feel comfortable with you doing that or not, and discuss it, right? That's up to you. But I'm just saying, for me personally, I hate that. I see it as cheating. I always seen that as cheating. If you're in a relationship and I'm in a relationship with a guy and I see him looking at other, like watching porn and stuff, I just feel disgusted. I feel like you're cheating on me if you do that, So I really hate that, and I really would prefer a guy to be in a relationship with me who didn't do stuff like that, because it really disgusts me and repulses me. I prefer a guy if he was nudity repulsed like me, or doesn't really care about nudity, right? And it's not into it, because I don't like that either. I know I'm rare in the sense of not liking nudity, because again, a lot of asexuals don't mind nudity, but I'm really averse to it. So yeah. So if we go back to what I was saying then, so when I was 16, I was pressurized into having sex for the first time. I did do it, and then 6 months later he dumped me and told me he'd been looking at other women. So that was not a good experience for me. But back then I used to kind of go from relationship to relationship. I wasn't single for very long. And then after that, I was in a long term. After that, when I went to college, I met a guy when I was 17 years old, and we were in a long-term relationship together, very long time. Unfortunately, he was abusive in some ways, and so that wasn't good. But with him, I can only remember having sex a few times, and in the end, he cheated on me with a married woman, with a married. No, I don't know if she's married, with a single mother anyway. Oh, is she single mother? She was a mother anyway. She had a kid. She was a woman with a kid, and she lived in Exmouth. I live in Exeter, and this guy was in a relationship with long term. I met him in college, like I said, and he was weird because he'd been naked with his mother in the bathroom and stuff. I think they were having sexual relations, because he would be like naked with her where she was like showering. He'd be on the toilet and stuff like that. It was very weird. His relationship with his mother was not normal. And I didn't like that relationship because she used to try and get him to do stuff that I just didn't like. I like get him to smoke and stuff like that. But it was honestly, it was like she was his girlfriend. I mean, it's not normal for a grown adult son who's like, to be doing, don't forget I met him when I was 17. It was a long-term relationship. To be doing stuff like that with his mother in the bathroom, do you know what I mean? You don't be naked in front of your mother while she's showering and you go to the toilet. It's just disgusting. And so yeah, and I was warned by his dad and the woman who would be his stepmom if they'd have been married, that from the country his mother comes from, and that there's kind of a lot of interbreeding type stuff and sexual stuff going on in family members that shouldn't really happen. And so that was kind of gross. It was like having another girlfriend in the relationship. It was very horrible. He got violent once when I tried to leave him, so quite badly. So yeah, so he didn't beat me up, but he grabbed hold of my leg, and to cut a long story short, my leg was bent back, and it's just horrible. And there was a lot of stuff going on in that time. Yeah, I don't really want to go into that anyway. So, and also I'm aware that it might be a trigger for some people talking about stuff like this, abuse and stuff, so I don't want to make it too detailed, right? And so anyway, that was really weird. And then I went, after that relationship ended because he cheated on me with this woman, a kid. He was meant to be doing 2 jobs, but he seemed to never sleep. Then really had been with this other woman. I don't know if he was, I think he was still doing 2 jobs, but it was weird. So he cheated on me. We didn't split up straight away, but we stayed in the same flat. He told me, we had a mortgage together, so it's the first time in my life I ever had a mortgage. And I moved on the 1st of December with him, and by the 22nd, I think, just before Christmas, he told my mum rather than told me first that he'd been having this affair with this woman. And so it was horrible. I've never had a mortgage since, and got this flat together, and it was horrible, horrendous. I went back and lived with my parents, but my mum didn't want me to stay there, so I had to leave. And then I came to live in Exeter, not at this flat now, but a previous place. And so, but I've been living with this guy, I was in a long-term relationship with. The first guy I was in a long-term relationship, I had actually been living in Exeter before I got the mortgage with him. Then we moved to Dawlish Warren. Then I had to move back to Exeter on my own, but I was still paying for the flat that I was with him until we could sell it, as well as paying for a new place. So that was really difficult for me. And then my long-term ex of a total of 8.5 years, I met him upstairs. I was friends with him for about 8 months before I got into a relationship with him. And unfortunately, he was really abusive in every way, but sexually, and he was good at sex. So it was really weird because when I was with him, I had some other guys' boyfriends. I had a couple of foreign boyfriends, one of whom pounced on me, and he shouldn't have done, but he did, and had sex with me when I didn't even say I was okay to do that, and didn't even want it. So that was a bad thing. But again, I put this down to a bad incident, so I don't dwell on it. And then another boyfriend I had, but he didn't have sex with me. And then I was another foreign guy I did have sex with, and I got bored after 3 weeks because I'm like, is this all you can do? Just stick it in me. It's just so boring. So I actually just couldn't be with him, because if you're asexual and you don't like sex, and you're not really into it, well, you can have it, but it's not really your thing. If a guy just sticks it in you, it's so boring. If there's no touching, not much, not much kissing, maybe a bit first, and there's no foreplay or nothing else, it's just boring as hell, because it's like, what's the point? Do you know what I mean? You don't get anything out of it, because if you're not interested in sex, like I was just interested in kissing and the touching. At that time I was into touching as well, but it's kind of like, I can't be doing this for like ever in a day. 3 weeks I was just bored, rigid. I liked the look. I mean, he was so hot looking, as in aesthetically so attractive. He was Latino. I met him in a nightclub. It was the first I started going out to nightclubs like later on in my youth. And so yeah, it was like really weird, because he cooked for me as well, which was great, but just when he started having sex, I was just so bored. I just couldn't stand it anymore. So yeah, anyway, going back to the second guy I was in a last long-term relationship with, that lasted until 2011, and he's the last guy I ever had sex with. So it's October 2011, so it was basically 10 years ago now. So I've been happily sex-free for 10 years. Now, during that relationship, I didn't know I was asexual. I thought I was heterosexual. and I did actually have sex with him, but sometimes we would go 2 to 3 months without me having sex, and I was really, really happy with this because I thought, you know, not many guys are going to be like this. But that was one of the reasons why I stayed with him. But he was abusive, verbally, emotionally, mentally, really abusive, and physically threatening as well. So punch holes in walls and stuff like that. Horrible. Pin me up against stuff. It's just horrible. But he was like his personality could change very quickly. So I was always in fight or flight with him. And then when it came to sexual stuff, he was like a completely different person. And this is what's so bizarre about him, because when he was sexual with me, having sex and leading up to that, he used to do lots of foreplay, which I did enjoy at the time, the kissing and the touching. And he was really good at that. He's kind of like really confident. And he, as a female, being quite honest with you, I felt quite sexually liberated being with him, because he encouraged me to like come as a female, which I think is a very taboo topic. It's not talked about on social media really. More of it is talked about with guys doing that. More of it's talked about orgasm, and more of it's talked about sexually. But he would do that with or without the sex, and he would really like be like, oh, it's okay to do that. And so I think that's very empowering as a woman. I have to say that was a good experience for me, because, you know, so many women are taught, oh, you know, you can't as a woman be sexually promiscuous, or you can't do sexual stuff, or you know, it's all about pleasing the man and stuff like that. With him it was different. So when he was in this sexual doing sexual stuff, he was like a complete different person. He was kind and caring and thoughtful. He would stop whenever I asked him to, even if he was in mid-flow of doing it or about to come, as it were. And it was a really, really good experience. And my last sexual experience overall was really, really good. I had good sex with him because of the way he treated me leading up to it, and the fact he would stop and respect every time I said stop. He would do that, you know. And in the past, I hadn't really had that with any other guys. Well, I'd had, you know, the guys I'd had sex with previously, I didn't really have it that much with, to be honest. The guys were for 6 months, we did that sometimes, but you know, it was very quick and over and done with very quickly. And his bit was very small, and it's like, is it really even worth bothering about? But there you go. And like I said, the foreign guy was only with 3 weeks, and the guy was when I was 16 dumped me after 3 months. 6 months, sorry. And so kind of like one guy pounced on me, which was my ex, was an ex. So it kind of like none of those experiences were really that great. I mean, the guy when I was 16, he wasn't bad, as in it didn't hurt me at all. You know, like even the first time didn't really hurt that much. He was gentle, and you know, and he, you know, it was consensual with him, and you know, it wasn't bad from that point of view, you know. But it was only the guy who I was in a last long-term relationship with, a total of 8.5 years, that was good at sex, you know. But I never looked at him and thought, I want sex with you. And looking back, when I realised it was asexual in 2014, I found that out. But I'd never actually looked at any mexes and thought, I really want sex with you. I need sex. I don't need sex, right? And so with my long-term ex of 8.5 years, you know, sometimes we would go 2 to 3 months without it. Now, you might think, why is this? If he was heterosexual, he's a very sexual guy in lots of ways. It was because he liked to do au naturel, if you know what I mean. So he didn't like wearing protection, which I do not recommend being without, especially if you are in a short-term relationship or just met the person. But anyway, this was the way he was. And so for me, I was on the pill, and if I had, because I got very sensitive tummy, if I was upset at all, I basically, by the way, I have got my Asexual Guide to Sex book I'm still finishing off. So yeah, you can tell I've got a lot of experience to put into that book for asexuals who have told me they're interested in trying sex, right? I've still finishing that book. I started in June 2019. I still intend to finish it. I've just got some more stuff I keep needing to add, because it's a very important book that I keep people safe as much as possible who read it, right? And so I've gone off on a tangent, I know I have, and I'm trying to get back to my train of thought of what I'm talking about. So anyway, so this guy I was with for a total of 8.5 years, you know, I never looked at him and thought I want sex with him. But anyway, he liked to do it au natural. And I had, if you take the pill, right, if you get a tummy upset, it cancels the pill out from working usually, right? And I have IBS, which, you know, is a condition, like anxiety condition, and it can cause diarrhea and stuff like that. So it's important you know this, right? And so because you need to keep yourself safe. And so anyway, to cut a long story short, I was getting quite a lot of tummy upsets, and obviously it didn't help being with a guy who was abusive, because it kind of makes you on edge all the time and your tummy not very good anyway. So there was lots of times where I said, I can't do it now, I've got an upset tummy and stuff like that. And so we would go 2 to 3 months sometimes without doing it, because he wanted to do au natural or not at all. That's the way it was. But he still wanted to be in a relationship with me. He didn't want to not be in a relationship with me. So, and at the time, I was kind of compelled to stay with him. I know it's not good staying with an abuser, but that's how it was for me back then. He had some sort of like emotional hold over me, control over me, you know, and a lot of the time he wouldn't even let me go. I used to try and run away from him, and he would still keep coming back, and I wasn't strong enough because I had feelings for him to let that kind of go permanently. I even spent with him for 6 months, and he stalked me, and I got an injunction out on him, and he didn't take any notice of that. And so 6 months I still got back with him, and then so I was with him for a year and a half, split up for 6 months and back for 7. So I was total of 8.5 years. Which wasn't great, because I was in like a mental prison for years, and now I'm so glad I've been free of this guy for 10 years next month on the 5th of November. So, which is incredible. I love it. You know, I'm so happy, and I don't want to get into a relationship like that ever again. So I'm really cautious and wary of that. And I love living in my own place, having my own space now. Because when you live with someone, it's very difficult if you're with a controlling person, because you're financially dependent on them, your home's dependent on them. I moved to this place to get away from him. I've been here living on my own now for 17 years, 7 years, and I absolutely love it here. So I'm very fortunate and lucky. I feel so safe here, which is different from anywhere I've lived before, and it feels like home, you know. So yeah, so you know, so sometimes we'd go 2-3 months, and I thought one of the reasons why I stayed with him, an abusive guy, but not abusive sexually, was because I thought, I'm not going to get any other guys like this, right? There's never going to be another guy who I can be with in a relationship who's going to go 2 to 3 months without sex and be fine with it, right? It's just not going to happen. And so I didn't know that anyone else was like me, not bothered about sex, didn't want it, didn't need it. So I worked out in my head at the time when I was with him, the most I would want to do that if I was having to do that would be 4 times a year, which would be once every 3 months. That would be like enough for me to do, right? But so sometimes we used to go 2 to 3 months without it, but then I would do it like up to 3 times in a row, which might seem really excessive for an asexual person. But for me personally, I never wanted kids. I never wanted to get pregnant. So if I was on the pill and I was having sex one time, I'd rather have multiple times that time and get it over and done with, was my theory, and give him his pleasure, which he hadn't got for like 2 or 3 months, than having to split it up over multiple days and do it lots more times at individual days when I'm already taking the risk of getting pregnant, even though I'm on the pill. Because I had a friend who got pregnant on the pill when she was 17 years old. So the pill's not 100% effective. And like I said, if you have a tummy upset, it cancels it out. And you have to take it strictly at the same time every day. So you know, for me, I would do it like I remember doing it 3 times in a row. Now, technically speaking, a lot of times people will tell you in magazines and films or whatever that guy can't get it back up that quickly. But with him, he could. So we would literally have sex, then it would be time to go again. And I'm kind of a hyper in personality, so I could do that. And because the first time can be a bit more painful than the rest of the times, because you're already kind of lubricated down there. I'm telling you this bluntly because obviously I'm bringing the Asexual Guide to Sex book out, and it's important you know this and you understand how it feels differently when you're asexual to an actual heterosexual person. Because I was just like, you know, for me, you know, I was thinking about practical stuff, and I was thinking, you know, like, he hasn't got his sex for 2 to 3 months. He's going to want it. And on the times I can do it, he's going to want it a lot more. So I was kind of, and I thought, if I'm already going to risk pregnancy, I'd rather get it all over and done with once, because you can tell that's not how heterosexuals think. They don't think, oh, I'm going to do it quickly to get it over and done with. They want to have it over and over again because they look forward to it and enjoy it. I was just kind of like, I want to get it over and done with, you know. And if I'm risking pregnancy anyway, I'd rather do it all in one night, because I used to get pregnancy test kits and test myself just because I was so freaked out. I didn't ever want that. It's my worst nightmare. I absolutely do never want kids in my life. I knew that since 15 years old. Physically don't want them. I mean, like, getting pregnancy test kits is just like obviously quite extreme behavior, but it's necessary, you know. I had to take the morning after pill twice as well because because of one time I thought I might with another, was it another ex or was it the same one? One time a condom burst with a guy who tried to have sex with me. Ex tried to have sex with me, which I didn't realise he was going to do that. So I kind of like had to do that because I didn't want to get pregnant. I didn't want to take any risk even though I was on the pill. And the other time, yeah, I think I had a tummy upset, so I had to do that. It really hurts as well. You know, it kind of hurts your tummy as well. You feel like it's really painful. So I did that to keep myself safe. I knew I never ever wanted children of my own, and decided even 15, if I was having kids, I adopt, but I don't want them. I just really not into that. So yeah, so you know, so sex with my last long-term ex, it was good because of the foreplay, because at that time I liked to be in touch down below, and I also enjoyed the kissing, but that's where it ended. I didn't really want to do the sex, but because he'd done that for me, I kind of needed to do the sex for him. And that's how it works, you know. And I sometimes he would just stop kissing me because it's like, oh, we're having sex now. I was just thinking, but please, can I not just have your lips and your finger for a bit longer? Because that's what I really want. I don't really want the sex, but you know, you kind of like, okay then, because you've had what you has pleasure for you, you give them their pleasure, right? But he used to do a lot of foreplay stuff. He used to do like we used to do a lot of touching. If we didn't have sex, which, you know, if we weren't having sex for 2 to 3 months, sometimes we would mutually masturbate each other. Now, if you look at a lot of articles, they'll say mutual masturbation is when you actually masturbate in front of each other. That wasn't the case. What we did, it meant we masturbated each other at the same time. I don't know why there seems to be a very big difference now between what mutual masturbation I thought was and now what it is today. Because when I read articles, because obviously I've been just checking stuff for Asexual Guide to Sex book, you know, like they say mutual masturbation is where you masturbate in front of each other. I've never done that. I've never touched myself. I never used to masturbate myself ever. So I would never do that with an ex. I never did that when I was with my ex, you know. So it was always like mutual masturbation, doing it to each other. And that is a good alternative if you don't want sex or you can't have sex for whatever reason. It's a very good alternative because it kind of gives them their pleasure and you're not having penetrative intercourse. So you can get heterosexuals that are penetration repulsed. They're not asexual, but they're penetration repulsed. And obviously you can get asexuals that are penetration repulsed as well. So if you're an asexual person who's with a heterosexual person and you really don't want sex, masturbating each other might be a good alternative for you. Obviously you've got to be okay with touching their naked body. These days I'm not really into touching, like as in being touched and touching a guy's private part. I don't want to touch a guy below the waist physically with my hand on it, right? So, but I don't mind licking, kissing and sucking a guy's nipples, which is really weird. It's not weird, but it is kind of, because it's like goes against the norm, doesn't it? Because usually guys do that to women, but I don't want it to be done to me. But I'm happy to do that to a guy, but he doesn't need to reciprocate that to me. So there was a time when I first found out I was asexual in 2014. For a couple of years, I didn't even think I liked that. I didn't even think I liked to see a guy's top naked. I just thought, you know, like, I don't like that. But then I ended up liking it. I think it's because I've had dated heterosexuals and I kind of like got into that. And I think I enjoy it more than they do. But anyway, yeah, 2014, what happened in 2014? So 2012, my last long-term ex of 8.5 years finally split with me on 5th of November 2012. So 10 years next month. 5th of November is bonfire night, so I can always remember it's 2 something in the morning, nearly 2:30 in the morning. Keys swang. I was really upset and devastated in the sense of my feeling for him, but I knew I was so happy he left. And that time I did not allow him to come back into a relationship with me. He did try tactics like slashing his wrist, but he didn't really slash me. He perforated them and came to my home like that. So he was using all sort of manipulative, emotional blackmail, abusive techniques that didn't work on me anymore. And he was jealous of my guinea pigs and stuff like that. It was really weird. So when he found out I had some new guinea pigs, that, you know, because he came by my flat accidentally on purpose. When he found out I had guinea pigs, it put him off being with me again. And also because I have fibromyalgia, which is a chronic pain condition for life that affects the nerves and muscle of the body, he had something wrong with him. But he was always the type that had to beat me So if I had some illness or was poorly, he had to have an illness or sickness that was worse than mine. And when he saw me this time outside my home, accidentally on purpose, ran into me, then he was talking about he had this lump on his nipple, which I told him about when I was in a relationship with him and he needed to see someone, but he didn't for 2 years. So then they said he's going to have it removed. That's what he told me. Of course, he thought I'd feel sorry for him, but I told him, well, I've got fibromyalgia, which is a chronic pain condition that affects the nerves and muscles of the body for life. And he didn't like that. So that, coupled with the guinea pigs that he was jealous and couldn't stand, meant he stopped coming near my home and stopped wanting to be with me, thank God, because he couldn't stand me having guinea pigs. When I had guinea pigs, he punched a hole in the wall when I got home of a rented flat we lived in. And this was the landlord's. He had to seal it up. It was horrible. Just imagine the little guinea pigs having that guy do that and being aggressive and punching a wall above their cage. Imagine how frightened they must have been. It was disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And so yeah, anyway, so I'm so glad to be free of him, because I talk about him a lot on this channel. I do still have dreams with him in there, in the dreams, like I'm still with him. It's awful. Probably partly PTSD, but obviously I keep bringing him up on this channel because he's the last person I had sex with, and I talk about it because I want to help asexuals, to understand the difference between, like I said, this video, heterosexual, and then realizing you're asexual. And obviously I want to share experiences to help you, but it's not easy when I'm kind of recounting those experiences with him all the time. But I don't like the fact that loads of people are like, oh, you just haven't had good sex. I have had good sex, even though I didn't want sex. I was consensual with him, but I wasn't into it. So sometimes that ex would try to instigate sex with me, but I would be doing the washing up. I hate washing up, but I would do it and have my headphones on with my music, and he would come up behind me, try to touch my breasts and start instigating sex, and I just wasn't interested. I'd rather stay washing up, and I hate washing up and listen to my music. So it was obvious I was asexual, never realised it. And so then when we split up in 2012. He'd actually been seeing another woman in the place where he lived. He was living in like a bed sit in a house full of, and then he revealed he'd be interested in this other woman. Had her in his flat, sitting on the couch with her. I don't know if they did anything or not, but anyway. So he took 10 days to decide whether to leave me or not. Now, the reason I didn't split with him is because I wanted him to split with me this time, because last time he split with me before, we were apart for 6 months, but he stalked me and didn't even take any notice of a police injunction. And he was making out to everyone that knew him, oh, Sandra left me, it's so bad, she's so horrible. So this time I wanted him to take onus for it and him to leave. So after 10 days of deciding whether to stay in a relationship with me or not, and go back to the woman in the house as he lived in, and go back and see her before apparently she went back to her own country because she was foreign, so they couldn't be in a relationship together anyway. But he went back to her, and after all that, he decided not to be with me. But then, like I said, he tried all this emotional blackmail stuff on with the wrists and all, trying to turn up at my flat, But anyway, it didn't work, and I've been free of him. I did see him a few times after that, but then it finally stopped, thank God. Because I'm on in terms of safety, thanks for the thumbs up, in terms of the safety aspect, I can't have him near me. I'm still a medium risk category for his abuse. So in police terms, I've got to keep him away from me. And in his past, he wasn't good in his life. He was actually a criminal. I found out more of a criminal than I actually thought he was. I just thought he'd done some crime, but I realised he was on a wanted shoplifting, prolific shoplifting wanted list where he lived before he met me. And he didn't tell me this till a few months before he actually split with me, and I was in shock that I didn't know that. So yeah, pretty crime-ridden. But he changed his name when he was with me to have my last surname in case we did get married, because at one point we were going to get married. And he got me this engagement ring that was really expensive, that he paid off over a long period of time, made for me, but never gave it to me, and tried to emotionally blackmail me, saying, oh, if you don't marry me, you're not going to get the ring and stuff like this. Because I said in the end, I'm not going to marry you. I said, I'll be with you, but I can't marry you. So yeah, anyway, that was really weird. I don't like talking about all this stuff because it really brings up a lot of and difficult memories. But anyway, I've told you a lot more on this overall picture and a lot more details than I've gone into ever before, I think, on this channel. But it's important I help you, you know, because if I take this stuff to the grave with me, who's it helping after all? You know, not many people really, is it? But so yeah, so anyway, so 2012 split. I decided that I needed to be single for at least a year. It took me 18 months to 24 months to get over him fully. So I was with this guy for a total of 8.5 years. And the love feelings I had for him were intense. When I first split up, you know, even though I wanted him to go, I knew I couldn't stay with him because he was always abusive. I knew I had to split with him. I'd stay split with him eventually. I felt like my whole soul and heart had been ripped out of my body and tortured, and I've been beaten up. And that's how bad the emotional stuff was at the time. And so even now, that's why I find it difficult to think about getting into a relationship with any guy, because even now, even if I like a guy a little bit, I do get emotionally connected to them. I do have difficult feelings to deal with. I'm a hyper romantic, so it's not good. So anyway, it took me 18 months to 2 years to get over him. Finally, after 24 months, I was over him and didn't have any love feelings, because it's horrible when you have love feelings for someone who you know is abusive and you can't be with, and you want to hate them, but you can't actually hate them for a very long time. I don't think about hating him so much. I just think about not liking him. Really, I'd hate what you did. But I just the only reason I don't fully hate him is because I think he had some feelings for me, even though they're a very unhealthy love. Whereas the guy I was in the first relationship with, I kind of hated him, because he I don't even think he ever loved me. And the one that was nude in the bathroom with his mother. So yeah, I've been in some weird relationships. So yeah, but I don't even really think so much about hate. I just think I don't like either of them now. Just horrible people to me. And so I just, yeah, kind of, that's where I'm at. So yeah, so after a year, it wasn't quite a year, so it was, I think, October. I split up with, well, my ex split up with me on November the 5th, 2012. I think it was October 2013. Was it 2012? No, it's 2011. I keep saying it's 2012. I am so sorry. It was 2011 because it's been 10 years this year. 2012 is when he did come by my flat in January 2012. And when I had a conversation about guinea pigs and the fact I have fibromyalgia. But it was actually November the 5th, 2011, not 2012, that he actually split with me, because it's been 10 years this year and it's 2021 now. And in 2012, so it was November 2011 he split with me, and in October 2012 was when I actually had started dating again. And 2012 was when I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia in the January, which is when he came by my flat accidentally on purpose, and we've been split up since the November. So yeah, so that is right. 2011 was the last time I had sex. 2011, sometime in October. I don't know the actual dates. It's been 10 years this month. 10 years this month. And so anyway, so yes, I start in 2012 is when I started dating again. I actually dated a Portuguese guy, but we weren't suitable for a relationship because he wanted sex, and he said, I don't think we're going to be suitable because he wants that and I can't really do that. And so, and the communication wasn't good with him either. I didn't think he was really into me. And so yeah, so that didn't work. He broke my heart, really. So that was quite difficult. And I usually get like no guys interested in a relationship with me, or 3 guys at once. It's really weird. So there was another couple of guys that came in, you know, interested in me at that same time. I can't even remember who they were. This Portuguese guy now, you might actually, was someone who I still have as a Facebook friend, because he worked at a restaurant where I go to, and I wanted to go back in there, even though he broke my heart, because it's one of the few places I can eat in my city. And now he's married. I'm really happy for him, because I know we weren't suitable. And years later, actually, when I was in a club, before he got with the woman he's married to now, he was dancing with me, and I don't know if he kissed me or just danced with me, and he wanted to come back to mine, but he said we're not suitable for a relationship. But I wasn't bothered then, and I was over him, and I think he didn't understand. I refused for him to come back to my place anyway, to drop me off at the door. When a heterosexual guy says, "Can I drop you off at the door?" it usually means I want to find my way into your home to have sex with you, but they don't tell you that. So, they'll make out, "Oh, I want to drop you home because, I care about you, worry about your safety." But when they get to the door, they'll say, "Oh, can I come in? Just for a minute, just for a short time." And this is how they then get into your place for you then to like say yes to sex, because it's easier then because they're already in your home. This is a tactic used by sexual people, heterosexuals. I have experience with this, and I've also seen it from a heterosexual dating coach on Facebook as one of the tactics. You try and ask about coming in for a drink or use their toilet or something, and that's how you get into their place, which makes it much more easier for them to ask for sex and get it, because they're already in your place and you feel more obliged to have it if they're your partner, technically speaking. So yeah, so be very, very careful of that. So anyway, so none of that worked out. And then 2013, I was in a 3-week relationship with a Bangladesh guy. Now, I didn't mean for it to be 3 weeks, but he cheated on me within 3 weeks because he wanted sex and I didn't. So yeah, I forced myself to be naked with him in the shower and shower him down because I couldn't bring myself to have sex with him. At that time, I told my parents about this, and they thought it was quite funny. Well, my mum actually, but my dad usually hears everything my mum. I'd say to my mum on the phone anyway, but my mum did laugh at the time because she said, "Oh, you just want a friend, you do," because she thought it was funny and unusual that I didn't want sex. This is before she found out I was asexual. My parents are cool with my asexuality. They understand me more now, so they're better with me now. But at that time, but I didn't understand because I'm like thinking, well, my parents don't like sex before marriage anyway, so why is that funny? But anyway, it was something that was amusing to them at the time. But they were like, "Oh, you just want a friend, you do," and I was like, it's very hurtful to me, that is, because as a romantic person, I know I'm asexual now, but I didn't back then. But as a romantic person, I don't cuddle my friends and I don't kiss my friends. I have strict boundaries, which is very important. And so, it's horrible that some people, like a general population, if a relationship doesn't have sex in it, then obviously for heterosexuals, it isn't a real relationship to them. It's kind of invalid as a relationship because relationships traditionally are meant to have sex in them. And it's like, but you can be in a relationship without sex. Sex isn't love. And so, it's just kind of weird. Yeah. And so I never just want a friend, I want a romantic relationship. Even now, I want a romantic relationship without sex. But my mum and dad understand me more now. So it all makes sense to them. So they know why I don't want sex relationship. And they know why I don't like nudity. Because my mum thought it was because I have some sort of problem or issue with insecurity. I was like, no, I just hate nudity. And they understand that fully now. So they're really cool about stuff. And they know I like younger guys in the early to mid-20s. So they're all cool about that. So that's all good. So something that's really good. Excuse me. For my asexuality, when I found out in 2014, is a lot more understanding from my parents about that type of thing now about me. So that's really good. And I'm fortunate to have parents like that who do accept my asexuality, because there's a lot of parents that still don't and find it weird. But my parents, like, when I was in 2014, I told my mum on the phone, she's like, "Oh, well, the second time I phoned up, she's like, "Oh, it sounds like you," and it all made sense, But back then in 2013, when I had this Bangladesh guy, and my mum was like that, I was thinking, I found it really hurtful because, a relationship shouldn't be based on sex. It should be based on love and feelings and emotions, right? And the only two people that should decide what's valid and not in a relationship are the people that's in it. If someone says they're in a relationship, they should just believe they're in a relationship, whether they're having sex or they're not having sex. It doesn't matter. Not every heterosexual has sex every minute of every day. On average, heterosexuals tend to have sex about 3 times a week, in my experience, right? The average person does. That's why I was happy at the time that my ex only wanted, sometimes I didn't do 2 to 3 months with my ex, right? Because he wanted to go natural, like I said. And I couldn't do that all the time because of my tummy. Because it cancels a pill out if you have upset tummy. So my tummy's very sensitive. So yeah. So 2013, I was gutted because I'd forced myself to be in the shower with this guy and shower him down and me being naked. I just was not looking. At that time, I didn't like nudity. I really understood that I just couldn't do sex. That was the first time really I knew I couldn't do sex. I was really trying all my might to think, why can't I have sex? Why can't I have sex? I really wanted it. I just couldn't do it. And so I went in the shower and showered him down. I was naked. I was thinking, just don't look at you being naked, Sandra. Just pretend you're not doing this. Just focus on his body and him and giving him sexual pleasure in that way. And kind of that was it. And then I found out he'd been seeing this other girl anyway, and all that had to end. So that was not a great experience. And then in 2014 was when I found out I'm asexual. So it was really, really strange because I got this phone call out of the blue from this counsellor saying, oh, you've been on a waiting list and now we can see you. I can see you. And this person actually sounded nice on the phone at the time. And it was out of the blue because the previous time I'd had counselling, the woman told me that I don't need any more counselling because all the answers I have myself. And so therefore that was the end of my counselling. And so I thought it was strange out of the blue, like, I don't know, it must have been over 8 months later or something, or even longer than that, that this woman turned up and said, oh, you can have counselling now, you've been on a waiting list. But I thought, everything happens for a reason. We don't always know why. And if an opportunity comes, you should take it like that because there must be a reason for it. And so this is when I went to the counselling, and I thought the only reason I could think I've been referred to it is because the previous counselling, where the woman said I don't need counselling ever again, I told her about the incident when I was 15. And that's how I discovered it was attempted rape after talking to her. And I got offered to go and do group therapy work with rape victims. But because I hadn't actually been raped and it was like attempted rape, I didn't want to hear the stories of other people because that would just make me worse and freak me out and be really upsetting for me. Thanks for the thumbs up, lots of love. And so I thought I just can't handle that because I don't want to hear people's experiences of that. It's just going to make me freaked out because I just put it down to bad incident. I just wanted to move on with my life and I felt that would be like going backwards. So I refused group therapy for that, because it was like I said, it was a support group for people who had been fully raped, basically. And I'm like, I don't want that, no offense to people who've gone through that and done that therapy. I'm if you found it effective and want to do that, it's great. I just wasn't for me. And so that's the only thing I realised thought I had about why I might have been referred. So anyway, when I went to see his counsellor, I agreed to see her. And I went to see her. And I started talking about the fact that I like a relationship. I'm really, pull this blanket down a bit. I'm really want a romantic relationship. I strongly crave that. But I like kissing, but I don't like sex. I like kissing, romance, but not sex. And I find it really difficult because everyone I know wants sex in a relationship and I'm not like that. And I getting to the point where I feel I can't ever have a relationship ever again. But I'm really romantic, so I don't know what to do. Like, is it going to be this way forever? And basically, I just I can never have a relationship ever again in my life because that's what the stage I was getting to. And so I said, I just can't do it again. I just can't bring myself to do it. I like kissing, but I don't like the sex. And she was like, this was the worst thing she could have said, which was when she said to me that you have to have sex in order to keep a good guy. And I was just horrified. If this guy was good for me, the theoretical guy, then why would he want to have sex with me and only be loyal to me in a relationship with me if I had that, if it was something I didn't enjoy and didn't like? How can a guy be good for me if he wants me to do something I don't want to do and I have to do it to keep him? That isn't a healthy relationship. It isn't good. It was the worst thing she could have said to me. I thought I'd come here to get help for something that's really difficult for me, and I've got the worst advice, worst response I could ever get, that I'm going to have sex if I wanted to keep a good guy. And she said she was worried about me, and she looked really genuinely worried. Like, you're never going to get a relationship without sex ever, and if you want a good guy, you're going to have that, and it was just horrible. I was absolutely horrified. And so that's when I went home and Googled, after that session, I like kissing but not sex. And I found Asexuality and even asexuality.org and the biggest online forum for asexuals. I was just like, oh my God, there's other people like me. I was reading some of them before I actually joined the site officially. And I could just see that people were wanting relationships without sex. They were wanting love without sex. And I'm like, I never knew these people existed. I honestly believed I was the only one in the entire world, planet, universe who did not want sex. I thought there's no one else like me. I honestly thought I was so unique that there was just no one else like me. And when I saw these people, I was like, my God. I'm like, but I could actually consider a relationship possibly again now because there's people like me. And so, you know, so I went on asexualitic.com. That's the first time I registered. So I'm like a full member on there because I was on there before there was 5,000 plus followers and subscribers. So I've got like a lifetime account now. And yeah, so I went on there. I remember putting, "Hi, I'm Sandra. I like kissing and romance, but not sex. Looking for friends or something." Or I just put that one, like that second sentence. "Oh, I'm happy being single," I put at that time because I was so scared. So I put, "Hi, I'm Sandra. I'm asexual in orientation. And basically, you know, like, I'm just looking for friends or something. I'm happy being single," something like that. Or "I'm happy being single." Because I just had to test the water. I was so scared. Now it's, you know, I'm fully fledged out on a full bio description, job description. What, you know, if you want to be in a relationship with me, check it out, asexualise.com. You know, it's like a full job description and personal specification, my ideal guy. I'm into young foreign guys, in case you don't know, particularly in them, right? Excuse me. So yeah, so anyway, in their 20s. So yes. But in the UK, I don't want sex, don't want marriage, don't want kids, don't want to live together. So yeah, it's kind of difficult to find someone. Most people who are foreign want marriage at least. I'm just not interested in that. So yeah, so you know, in 2014 as well, I did have date this guy. So I dated this Bangladesh guy. Now I thought he was 23 because he looked 23, but I actually found out from his Facebook profile he's 21, and he was, at the time, he was my best ever kiss. And so I didn't know that I was attracted to that young guy. I thought 23 was my cut-off limit and I would not go below that. But then when I kissed this guy, I'm like, it was so amazing. But he had a date with me, and at the end of the night, he wanted sex with me. And I don't know if I don't think I actually told him I was asexual. I think I just said I don't like sex because I just was I just learned about asexuality back in March, April, and this was July, I think. And so I was kind of like still new, and I was still finding my feet, and I was still not confident in telling everyone and things. So I think I just said I'm not interested in sex. And this is when he dropped me back home, and he goes, "Oh, no problem. You can be my girlfriend. I can have sex with other women." And I'm like, no, just because I don't want sex doesn't mean to say I don't deserve the same monogamy as anyone else. And so that's not on. And so, you know, that's where it ended. But he did message me again, asking to meet up with me as a friend and go clubbing just as a friend. And I did do that. But he was not happy because really that's not what he wanted. When I went clubbing with him, there was a DJ there that was younger and foreign. I was chatting him up because I was no longer seeing this guy as a romantic potential partner because he wanted sex and he was no good for me. And so he got really peed off with me. He's like, "Oh, you see that woman at the bar? Go and talk to her for me. Tell her I'm interested." I said, "No, tell her yourself." So he went and got a drink, and then shortly after that, he came back and then was off in a huff going, "Oh, I'm going home. You coming?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm staying here. I'm going, having my, doing my clubbing." So he's really peed off, and he got really mardy and like moody, and wrote this message, and he was on my Facebook friend list, and I just got rid of him off there, really, and got him out of my life. Yeah, because like I said, the guys who were saying that, it's just not true. He thought I was going to go back to him, but no. And so yeah, and so after that, 2014 was also the year, I believe, 2014 and 2015. Well, I think it was October 2014 when I had the first Indian guy that was interested in me. But unfortunately, I knew him from blogging, but unfortunately, he was heterosexual, and it was disgusting. So one of my guinea pigs was not well. They were at the vets. I had to rush them to a vet, so I was waiting in the waiting room. So I say rushing, but it wasn't like they were bleeding. It was more like a case of they're really kind of like dying. But anyway, he was texting me while I was in the vets, basically saying that he would come. He was originally going to go to Canada, but then he decided he might come to UK. But then he said, "Oh, I don't want to be a virgin all my life," meaning that if he came to the UK, he'd be having sex with other women. And so again, I'm like, not again. It was really upsetting me because my guinea pig was basically dying at the time, and it was just horrendous. And so it was horrible. I was really upset, and I really liked this Indian guy, and I thought we had a connection, and I just was disgusted, really. And so that was really upsetting. But I realised then that was the first time I realised I had a connection with Indian guys. And I think it was the year after, in the January, then I had, or it wasn't long after that, or at some time, that I had this other Indian guy interested in me that was off asexuality.com. But that didn't end well either. And I really thought he liked me, but then he stopped talking to me. And so then, that was the end of that. But I was really upset about both of those Indian guys. But when I realised I had a connection with Indian guys, an instant connection, I felt something with them that I didn't feel with any other kind of guy usually. And so that's how come I started liking Indian guys. Also, when I was at college, I should tell you that I had a friend who was Asian at the time. Well, he Asian? Well, I actually think he was Middle Eastern in the end. I thought he was Asian. He spoke Arabic at the time, but I since found him on LinkedIn 1 or 2 years ago. I think he's actually Middle Eastern, he's not Indian. But anyway, he was really kind to me, and so that's when I kind of got into foreign guys. When I was 19, I got into foreign guys because he was really kind to me and caring. He used to bring me gifts back from his country. He used to phone me up and check I was all right, and he paid me a lot more attention and showed me a lot more caringness than a lot of British guys. And there was other people he'd come with in the class. I was doing a PA course at the time. And so I just thought, wow, this is really nice. He's really kind and friendly. I get on really well with him. I felt comfortable around him. So that's when I first started liking foreign guys. And then Indian guys in 2014 was when I realised my soulmate is actually Indian, especially going into 2015. And I was like, oh, I have an asexual soulmate who's Indian. And, because I realised in 2014 when I had that heterosexual guy who's Indian, I realised I couldn't be with him because he was sexual. So my soulmate must be asexual but Indian. That's how I kind of worked it out. And so that's how it grew to, me kind of searching for my Indian asexual soulmate. I mean, I have been on some dates with heterosexuals. I dated a heterosexual guy, was it for a couple of months in 2017, but he ended up being a real psycho. And then I ended up in a relationship with a guy who was not asexual a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, I think it was. But he was unfortunately not asexual and no good for me. So yeah, I really need an asexual guy. The only guy I've been in a relationship with technically was asexual, but I don't know that he was asexual. Was a guy, but we only had an online relationship for like a month, just under a month. He was supposed to be coming to see me in my city, but then when I said I wasn't going to take my clothes off in the hotel, that's when he changed his personality. So I don't even know that he was asexual. I don't know. He had a disability, so I don't know if he had the disability but couldn't actually have sex and really not asexual, because guys who are heterosexual but can't have sex for disabilities, they get very frustrated about sexual things and not being able to do sexual stuff, whereas an asexual person, in my experience, doesn't usually have that. Maybe if they're more grey, they'd be a little bit more like, but in general, even the greys, they don't tend to get frustrated. Like with this guy, when I said I wouldn't take my clothes off in the hotel, he just changed his personality. It was horrible. So I don't usually do long distance relationships, but it was in this country. But yeah, so I don't even really think of that as a proper relationship, because I never met the person in person, and so yeah, I kind of like still look for my younger foreign soulmate. I really think I need an asexual one, because I just think sexuals are just overall going to be no good for me, and so it's it's strange, but if we think and look back, what it's like for a heterosexual to find out they're asexual, it's kind of weird when you look back, because like when I look back on my life, like I said, there's clearly evidence that I've always been asexual, but didn't realize it basically since I've been born. When I did have sex, I wasn't really interested or bothered about doing it. For years, though, something I've mentioned before on this channel, I did have high levels of arousal, and I mistook that for sexual attraction. So when I first discovered asexual in 2014, I did a research for 3 weeks, and I was trying to find out where I fitted on the asexual spectrum. I knew I was only attracted to guys, so I was heteromantic, but I didn't know what else I was. And I spoke to this guy on asexuality.com, who did actually do asexual meetups at the time in London. And when I talked to him about the way I was and the way I like to passionately kiss but I don't want sex, he said that's a grey sexual. And when I looked up grey sexual, it was basically meant that you do experience sexual attraction only under limited, rare, specific circumstances, or you experience it but not enough to want to act on it, which is pretty much the same today. Although back then, a grey asexual was also a catch-all term for those who didn't quite fit into a specific box. So anyway, I thought that he must be right, because I thought I experienced sexual attraction but not enough to want to act on it. So I went with that. And then I realised, when I went on Ava and Asexuality, when I was reading from their through their forum threads and different topics, they were talking about sex. And they seemed to talk more about sex than the heterosexuals I spoke to, but in a more educational way. And they were just having it, well, I say educational, it was kind of having the chats about it. And so anyway, yeah, they were talking about it, and I started getting aroused in my genitalia. I'm like, what the hell's going on down below? Because I'd never known this before. So when I was in heterosexual relationships for years, I didn't notice this about myself, because I was having sex at the time, because I thought it was what was normal, and I didn't analyze myself. Wasn't aware of my own body in the sense of like awake, what was going on in and of itself. Because I was in a heterosexual relationship, you tend to focus more on the pleasure of the other person and what you're doing in that relationship. And so therefore I started getting aroused. I'm thinking, hang on a minute, it's really weird. I'm looking at a chat on an asexual site, but they're talking about sex, which is something I'm not actually interested in, but I'm getting aroused. What's going on? This is really weird. I felt like my body was doing stuff that I didn't want. And I remembered back in 2013 with the Bangladesh guy that, that I couldn't actually have sex. But when I was kissing him, I thought, oh yeah, I did feel some pain down there, but pain because I was really aroused, but I didn't want sex. My mind would not physically bring myself to have sex. And then I realised, oh my God, you're experiencing arousal. You get aroused, but you don't want the sex, and you've never looked at anyone and thought you want sex. None of your exes, you haven't done that with them. And even with the guy that I've been in a relationship with for a total of 8.5 years, I think I don't think I initiated sex hardly ever. I might have done it a few times, but if I ever kind of went first, it was because I wanted to be more in control of the situation and like kiss on top of him, not have him kind of like being in control all the time, if you know what I mean. So it's more like being in control of myself and what I was doing. Because if a woman's on top having sex, you can control what's happening a lot more, penetration and stuff like that. I'm talking openly honest about this, because if you do have any experience, this is good for you to know this, right? I'm aware there's probably sex repulsed asexuals on here as well on this channel, so I do apologize for some of my very blunt and direct speech this evening, well, today now, wherever you are in the world, right? But I just needed to say it all, because this is ACE week, Asexual Awareness Week, when I'm recording this in 2021, and I think it's important to, I've told you my whole story, which I pretty much have now. And so, that's when I found out I was aroused and I don't experience sexual attraction. So I mistook my high levels of arousal for years as sexual attraction. And then when I realised this, I'm like, oh my God, I'm not actually a grey sexual, because I don't experience sexual attraction, but not enough to want to act on it. I don't experience any at all. But then I realised I have these grey areas, because I get high levels of arousal. When I kiss, it's very sexual in behaviour with my clothes on, despite not experiencing any sexual attraction, never wanting sex. And with the way I like to kiss and move my body up and down the guy when I like to kiss him, and be close body contact with clothes on, so sitting on his lap in between his legs, I'm okay with all that. Then yeah, it's kind of like I have sexual behavior but no sexual attraction. I have arousal, high levels of arousal, but no sexual attraction. So I then thought, this is my grey areas, and I don't quite fit into an asexual box, because I think when I was talking to hetero-romantic guys, as opposed to heterosexual guys, when I was talking to hetero-romantic guys on asexuality.org, some of them got a bit, like it was too much. The way I kiss is too much kissing, too sexual in behaviour for them. And so then I realised I'm very different to a lot of asexuals. I don't kind of fit in, because I experience arousal but don't want sex. I don't like nudity, but I love kissing a lot with my clothes on. And the only asexuals I found that really are into the type of kiss I am into is more on the grey asexual side of the spectrum, and they all want to touch the body all over. So anyway, in my Asexual Perspectives book, I redefined grey A to mean grey areas, such as like mine, where you have high levels of arousal but zero sexual attraction, and yeah, sexual behaviour but no sexual attraction, right? And so I redefined grey A in this, but it hasn't been officially redefined anywhere else, but to mean grey areas. So yeah, and that's basically my asexual story of how I found out that I'm actually asexual and not heterosexual. And ever since then, asexuality has been a journey of discovery of myself, of my body, of what I do and don't like. You know, because these days at the moment, I just don't like any touching in places that are kind of private. So yeah, I hope you found this video useful, helpful, insightful. If you have, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that great big bell icon so you get notified of every time I go live like now, post a video. Hope you've enjoyed this, and if you've got any comments, queries, or questions, as always, post them down below. Love to hear from you. Till next time, thanks for all the thumbs up. I love you lots, and happy Ace Week. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye. Bye. Lots of love to you. Bye.